All right, we are live now. Welcome to the Ocean Plastic webinars of March 2022. I'm really glad to have today Edgar Dusacre from the University of Bordeaux and the University of the Basque Country, which makes him a very international PhD student. He is a PhD student in marine ecotoxicology and ecology. He obtained in 2021 a double master degree in integrated environmental management and coastline ecology with honors. He studies the aquatic microplastic and nanoplastic contamination for 3 years through his projects and the NGO that he co-founded, 4P Shores and Seas. And I'm sure he will tell us a lot more about this NGO. His current research project is called Plastifito, I hope I'm saying it right, and is focused on the study and the fate of microplastic, nanoplastic, and additive coming from the degradation of fishing gears during their life cycle in the Bay of Biscay, just across from France and Spain. So Edgar, you have 30 minutes, and after 30 minutes, we will take questions from the audience. The audience can log on sli.do, sli.do, and then they will be asked a passcode that is OPW. And then you can, guys, ask your questions live while Edgar is talking, and then I will go through them. You can also vote for your favorite one to make sure that I ask your favorite questions first. Anyways, Edgar, thank you for proposing to give a webinar today, and we're really happy to have you. And the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, so I will share the screen. Normally, you can.
We cannot see it yet, but yes. I see it's coming.
Okay, no, and you cannot see the good one.
No, it's in presenter mode. Yeah.
Sorry. I will come up. So here, that one. And now it's also presentation mode.
Yeah, still the presentation mode.
Hope I will succeed. And now it's cooking. Okay, perfect.
Perfect. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, nice. So, dear everyone, thank you, Audrey, for the quick presentation and for the invitation in this webinar. One of the first for me during this PhD project, so I'm happy to start here. Here today, we will speak about plastic pollution and oceanic pollution, but a bit more focused on the fishing gears and the fishing activity. In fact, as we will see after, this is a really worrying question that is not really studied. So the project we developed is called Plastifito Research Project, coming from plastic fishing gear toxicity. And it has been developed by my two supervisors, so Jérôme Cachot from the University of Bordeaux and Myrène Kadjalabile from the University of the Basque Country. This project is mainly financed by the French Office for the Biodiversity and the Natural Marine Park of the Bassin d'Arcachon. So this is an aquatic area in the southwest of France. The mainly popularized communication is made thanks to the organization, the scientific NGO we created 3 years ago for fisheries, and we are also working with other laboratories and with economic stakeholders for the future after we will publish our results. So a bit of context. Okay, if you already looked the other and listened to the other webinars, you already saw this type of graph. In fact, this is a graph of plastic consumption since 1950, but it's a new one of 2021 coming from the OECD, from the Global Plastic Outlook database. And so we have a new number here that say that in 2019, we consumed in the world 460 million tons of plastics. We can see that the consumption is fairly shared between America, Europe, China, and the rest of the Asia. And the consumption is a bit lower for other parts of the world. As all the other industry and human activity, fishing activity and fishing industry doesn't went against this evolution. So until the year 1960, most of the fishing net in the world was made of cotton or other natural fibers. Currently, most of them are made of synthetic material, so plastic, different polymers, as we will see after. But this material, the plastic material, is a material with multiple issues. First, for fishing activity, we have to understand that this is a really competitive industry and activity, and fishermen have a need for profitability. So here we can see two different vessels, two different boats. At the left, we have like a gill netter vessel. This is already a quite big boat. We have smaller in France and in the other parts of the world. And at the left, you have one of the biggest super trawler vessel of the world. This is a large-scale fishing vessel that can be outside of the port for more than 20 days. Many NGOs and laboratories are targeting a bit this type of boat for overfishing, and this is a really big activity that is quite hard to study and to control. But what I would like to show you here is that fishing nets will have a great pressure during the fishing activity due to the traction, due to the elongation, due to the contact with the seafloor, contact with fish, and contact with fishermen. So the material has to be really resistant and of a really good and have really good performance. And some studies, some teams have shown that natural fibers were not able to get this resistance to be able to continue this type of fishing. In fact, plastic materials are good for the profitability of fishermen and for the performance. Second issue of plastic material is that the end of life of nets and fishing gears is still poorly managed. Most of them are currently put in landfills or are incinerated. And we know that these two techniques of waste management are not really sustainable. However, some companies, some countries are also pushing for new techniques to develop recycling, the recycling of fishing nets. And here, so we have different companies of collect and companies of recycling. We have in France, like ClickDive and Filet Fab in France, and Econil is one of the most famous in the world. This is a product produced by the company Aquafil. And at the right, we have another company that is called C2C, a Spanish company. The third issue is that some fishing nets are lost, and after they induced ghost fishing. So here we have quite hard pictures, and this is called ghost fishing. So quite all the species and marine species are targeted by this pollution, and we can see birds, sharks, turtles, We can see also crustaceans with seafloor traps, fish, and also corals. Here we have a gorgon in Mediterranean. So this pollution is really worrying and also of interest, as we will see here. In fact, we call this abandoned, lost, lost fishing gears, abandoned, lost, or otherwise discarded fishing gears, called ALDFG. So this is a report of 2009 that focused the subject with the publication of the UNIP and the FAO. In that report, we understand that this is a really preoccupant issue and a real pollution. We also understand the reason of the different abandoned, lost, or otherwise discarded fishing gear. The main cause are conflicts between the fishing techniques. So it's like if a trawler or if a big trawler is fishing in an area, and if a gill netter already put a gill net, the trawler can go through the gill net and can take the fill net in the trawl. So it's what we call conflict. And this is the main reason of abandoned or lost fishing gears. After, it's poor weather conditions and other factors. But we have to understand one thing, is that fishermen don't want to lose the fishing net. It's not their will for most of them. In fact, a fishing net is really expensive. It's their jobs. So if they lose it, they have to, often they try to find it, so to find it again. So it's a lot of time. It can be dangerous. We already saw some fishermen dead for this reason. It's already a big loss of performance and profitability because they will lose time in their fishing activity. The fourth issue of this material is its degradation in microplastics and nanoplastics. But we don't really know the participation of the fishing activity in the global plastic pollution. In fact, we have just one global study made in 2019 that said that 10% of the mass of marine litter could come from fishing activities. So we know that fishing net can be degraded. So it produces little pieces of fishing net, and we can find them in coastline, beach during cleanup. But we don't really know about secondary microplastics. Yes, we talk about here secondary microplastic because it's come from the degradation of an already microplastic present in the ocean. So after maybe production of secondary microplastic, we will maybe also identify secondary nanoplastic. But for the moment, we don't really know it. And we will see that here. In fact, few studies on that topic have been made. Here we have a report also commented by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, made by Lusher and its team in 2017 on the topic of microplastic in fisheries and aquacultures. But the problem of this report is that it is not really focused on microplastic coming from the fisheries and aquaculture or the effects of this precise microplastic and nanoplastic. And the main reason of that is that in 2017, they didn't have any publication on that topic. In fact, the overall knowledge on that topic has to be improved. We have very few studies or reports on fishing gear sold and or used at global, regional, or local level. So we cannot really made a quantification of fishing nets or fishing gear lost or the production of microplastic and nanoplastic coming from their degradation, because we don't really know how much we have in circulation in the fishing industry and the fishing activity. And last point is that we have very few quantitative and qualitative studies on the link between microplastic, nanoplastic, additives, and fishing nets. If we look on Scopus for different research like marine plastics and microplastics and nanoplastics, we have 9,300 publications. If we look for fishing gear, microplastic, and nanoplastic, we drop at 7 publications. And if we look for fishing nets, microplastic and nanoplastic, we have just 2 publications. So what to do in that context? We have to get a better understanding to be able to develop a better action. We have to continue to investigate this potential key source of plastic pollution. And we have at the end to develop integrated socioeconomic and environmental management plans. In that context, we developed last year the project Plasfito research project, and this is my PhD project. So now I will try to explain you this project, and I hope that in few years I will be able to come back in these webinars to explain you and to present you our results. First, here we will do a quick reminder of the fishing fleet and the different fishing techniques. First, we have the trolling techniques. So we saw a boat before. Most of the fishing nets and materials that are used for trolling fishing are made of polyethylene and polypropylene. For perch seine or Danish seine, this is another technique. This is the same material are made of polyethylene and polypropylene. After we have the gill net technique. This is one of the most used techniques in the world. The material is made of polyamide, and for hooks, that is another technique. This is lines and hooks, and this is also a polyamide. And the last technique is trap. The material for traps is polyethylene, polypropylene, and polyamide. At the right, you have a picture of traps for octopuses. So it's quite interesting to see that, because the world is consuming quite a lot of octopus, but we don't really know how they are fished. So this is a trap for octopus. So here we will a bit speak more about European Union, France, and Spain, and more about France, because this is the first part of our work, our current work. So European Union is just representing 3% of the global fishing activity. In European Union, Spain is the first country, is the first fishing country with 18%. France is the fourth. So in France, most of the sales of aquatic and marine resources are coming from the fishing activity, and after this is shellfish farming and the fish farming. Here it's the different harbors and ports following region in France. We are focusing in the southwest of France, sorry. So here, Nouvelle-Aquitaine. This is not the main fishing region, but this is quite an interesting region, and this is the region where the two laboratories are. So the main, our main ports of interest are Saint-Jean-de-Luz and Arcachon, as you can see with the red square. About the fisheries that are French in the Atlantic, in the French Atlantic coast, most of the fishing activity is made by trawlers and gill netters. There are different types of fisheries. Most of them are small-scale fishery and inshore fishery. And this is the type of fishery we will work with. In fact, this is a much more small-scale fishing activity, and we can have contact with fishermen. We can work and evolve with fishermen. We can better understand the topic and the subject with these fishermen, and we are currently working with them. We also have to get in mind that fishing activity is a real economic sector of France and of many countries in the world. In France, the direct number of jobs created by fishing activity is close to 16,000 jobs. So it's a real economic sector. Here, our study area, so the southwest of the Atlantic for the French coast. This is the Bay of Biscay, and we are working between the estuary of La Gironde and the end of the Basque Country region in Spain. So with 4 ports of interest, Arcachon, Saint-Jean-de-Luz-Cibourg for France, and Pasajes or Pasaya, and Bermeo for Spain. Following and according to the past discussion we had for the 2 other or 3 other slides, we chosen to study 2 fishing techniques: trolling fishing fleet and gill netters. We have to also get in mind that the renewal time of trolling nets is 10 to 15 years. But they had new parts quite often. So it's an addition of new materials years after years. For gill nets, it's another process, and the renewal time is 6 to 8 months or a bit more. So our objectives. The general problem of this project is this following question: can plastic used in fishing activities pose an ecotoxicological risk to marine ecosystem in the southeast of the Bay of Biscay, which is known to be an area of marine litter accumulation? So 2 general objectives. The first is to assess the presence and ecotoxicological effects of microplastic, nanoplastic, and additives resulting from the degradation of fishing nets during the life cycle in the southeast Bay of Biscay. And the second one is to quantify and characterize micro and nanoplastic pollution from fishing activities in order to be able to develop new fishing materials and new methods of treating and collecting waste in the ocean in the future to help fishermen and to help this sector. So our method. The task 1 is to assess the quantity and chemical composition of fishing nets used in the southeast of the Bay of Biscay according to the different fishing activities. And so it's to characterize the release dynamics of micro nanoplastic as a function of the environmental factors during the life cycle of fishing nets. So we will use the artificial aging and also a natural aging. For the artificial aging, we will use different factors as saltwater, UV radiation, heat, abrasion, biocolonization, and agitation. The second task is to conduct a literature review and survey to document the composition of additives in fishing nets in order to select the main and most toxic substances. It's also to determine the release dynamics of additives during the degradation of fishing nets into microplastics and nanoplastics. In fact, currently, a lot of publications in these topics are saying that the effects due to microplastics on organisms could come from additives. During their degradation due to UV, abrasion, biocolonization, and other factors, polymers can degrade themselves in small polymers and oligomers. And during that degradation, they can some additives can can leach in from these polymers and can go in the natural environment. On the contrary, other environmental contaminants can also be absorbed in these different polymers. So here a study in 2018 showed that we have additives in plastics and in polymers. It is not a big discovery, but it's important to get it in mind. Different additives have nonylphenol, phthalate, bisphenol, styrene, and other. And also, they have shown zinc contaminants coming from the environment as heavy metal, PCB, PAH also. So this is really a preoccupant topic because we know their risk. And their risk, it is some can be carcinogens, they can be endocrine disruptors, growth disruptors, and they can induce physiological disorders. Different toxicity can be observed, acute toxicity, long-term toxicity, and chronic toxicity also. Third task, is to determine the ecotoxicity of micro and nanoplastic and the additives resulting from the degradation of fishing nets in different organisms at different levels of organization. So we choose to study 3 organisms close in the trophic web. Here's the microalga Isocris galbana, a copepod. We have not the real precise species, but Calanus elgolangicus could be a good one. And at the end, the little laboratory fish, Orzias latipes, and other species. This is also known as the Japanese medaka. Fourth task will be to study the effect on the food chain of degradation products of fishing nets. Here we can see interrogation points because we don't really know if fishing nets will produce microplastics and nanoplastics. So here, just to talk a bit about the toxicity and what we currently know in the literatures. It's not focused on fishing nets because, as we said, we don't really have knowledge about effects of fishing nets. But for other microplastics, we definitely identified the uptake of microplastic by different organisms. At the right, you can see a study of Matthew Cole from the University of Plymouth. So they have shown that the majority of zooplankton exposed to polystyrene bits demonstrated the capacity to ingest all sizes of microplastics, but they also observed a size-based selectivity for some species according to the size range of their prey. And they also showed that ingestion takes place in particular during the filtering feeding process. At the center, you can see a study of Arnaud Bringer from the University of La Rochelle and the University of Bordeaux also. So they have shown that microplastic tends to accumulate in the digestive tracts of oyster larvae. The exposure time of larvae had no impact on the amount of microplastics ingested for the same concentration. However, the higher the concentration, the more likely the larvae were to ingest microplastics. So they also said in that publication that the larvae ingest more microplastic than they excrete, which leads to an accumulation. At the right, sorry, you can see a study from 2019 on Japanese medaka. So they have shown that ingested microbeads are concentrated as they move through the digestive tract for 4 to 9 days before finally being shed in the feces. And almost all of the microbeads were excreted from the digestive tract, as we can see in the last picture at the right. A bit more about the effect of this uptake. First study on copepod, so Matthew Cole. They didn't observe significant differences in egg production rates between control and microplastics exposed treatments. However, in the later half of the study, so the center graph, microplastic exposed copepods produce statistically significantly smaller eggs than the control one. And this trend was also visible for eggs hatching success, for which the hatching rate decreased at the six days. At the center, so this is a study of Arnaud Bringer about oyster larvae. So they show that the site of microplastic also have a role in abnormalities and development arrest. And they also show that it could particularly get an impact in the swimming behavior of the organisms. And so they show that without exceeding the particle size at which the larvae can no longer ingest them, the larger the size of the microplastic were, the most abnormalities and growth retardation occurs. At the right, so this is a study on the Medaka. They also shown a decrease in the production of eggs by females of Medaka. The fifth task will be to assess an environmental risk of the fishing nets in the Bay of Biscay. So we will try to calculate the risk quotient using the exposure level of microplastic and nanoplastic coming from the degradation of fishing nets and the toxicity threshold of different toxicity and different level of toxicity. In conclusion, research on this topic needs to be continued, organized, and developed. Knowledge about the secondary microplastics have to be studied, and once the work has been completed, it should be repeated in other geographical areas and with other fishing gears, because as you so we will not be able to study every fishing techniques. More global conclusion, French and global coastline are definitely polluted by plastic. The ocean are polluted, this is ubiquitous. And we have a demonstrated toxicity on organisms at the base of the food chain. This is a non-negligible environmental risk, of course, and the health risk for humanity is still to be studied and demonstrated. In fact, we can conclude with this sentence, a common good to defend and hope to cultivate. So we must be aware of the current environmental and climate crisis, but let's not keep our arms down or give up. In fact, we have to act with tough and inside objectivity and a lot of a great rigorous mind. And we have to unite lay knowledge, scientific knowledge, industrial knowledge, and political action. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have questions and that we will have a great discussion.
Thank you very much, Edgar, for a really interesting presentation. I must say that I've learned a lot today. I will just stop sharing your screen. So here you go, you did it. Thanks.
Oh, perfect.
Perfect. So we can see both our faces while we're having this, what I think will be very interesting discussions. First of all, I want to ask you from your very last slide, you're talking about political action.
Yep.
How do you or will you make sure that the study you are doing will, like the information, the knowledge will percolate all the way to policymakers? Like we've seen this month in March that UNEA is starting to finally have discussions for a global legal binding agreement on marine plastic pollution. How do you see your, like the work you're doing, like in this landscape of policy making and so on?
It's definitely a good question, and we definitely have to try to get this consortium of a lot of different stakeholders coming from scientific to fishermen and other actors of plastic industry. I think that in this project we are quite lucky because we have already a great consortium of stakeholders. Definitely, we don't have political stakeholders currently, but I think for the moment it's a good thing because we will have to develop our research project. We will have to produce our results in objectivity, and maybe we will show that plastic fishing nets are not producing a lot of microplastic or nanoplastics, or maybe the contrary. We don't really know for the moment. But I think to be able to invest the political sector, we are currently doing that because during our webinars, during our popularized communication, thank you to the organization, thank you to the French Office for Biodiversity, Natural Marine Park, a lot of conferences, we will be able to speak about the project. And at the end, also we have the power of fishermen and also of fishermen committees. And with all these sectors, different peoples, we will be able to create a real report at the end, I hope, and to be able to take this report in France and in European Union to show our results and to help new companies, to help deputies, people that are currently making the law to take really decision about this precise contamination. And also we will have answers about fishing pollution, because today, and actually currently a lot of scientific publications are talking about this contamination. Like quite in every publication, you will be able to read fishing activity could be, it's hypothesis. I don't say that scientific or bad or saying like wrong things, but this hypothesis, we don't know.
Of course.
And so yes, this is with our answers, with other answers, Polymers in England, they are working on ropes of fishing activity. We are working on fishing nets, so you know it's really complementary work. So yes, I hope with everything and with also with companies, we will able to focus and to bring our knowledge at the political level.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, what you were saying about the UK team working on ropes, we have a comment here from Bernard saying that next to parts of our fishing gears in general, the ropes that are used in the maritime sector are considered to be at least an equal source of marine litter. So, of course, I think it's really important that everyone kind of like take their share of the cake. So in the end, we can look at every source of marine litter. And I think that's what's really interesting with your presentation and the work you're doing, is that you're focusing on fishing nets, you're working with fishermen. And I think that's also really, really important to always, keep in mind the stakeholder and the way you're presenting it and the way you're explaining your interaction with fishermen is really, really important. And I think that's what you're saying, which is, like trying to make something that works, this relation that works with the fishermen, and showing then in a report, then you can actually do this. That's something we can, export to different regions. That's something we can even export to different sectors. And that's I think key in your project here.
And definitely to add for UK, in fact, and for the end, definitely we already have like some result in Mediterranean, and we definitely saw that fishing nets are not the same. So in every region and every fisherman techniques, it will change. So if we reproduce this after the study in UK, and if we reproduce the study of UK on ropes, this is definitely a great subject also, ropes, we will have maybe different results. Yeah,
of course. And in the Mediterranean Sea, we have the mission ocean with the lighthouse on marine pollution in the Mediterranean Sea. So I think in the coming years, we'll see a lot of studies that will definitely be complementary to the one you're doing in the Bay of Biscay. The same Bernard, I guess, is saying that polyethylene and polypropylene, netgear and ropes are recycled at plastics in Denmark. I think it's a great example, is saying that the circular maritime ropes are with 97% recycled content in the market since 2021. So the market is moving, the maritime field is moving, and I think that's very nice to have good news in this field, where when we look at these pictures of the fish caught in ghost nets are really hard for us to see. We have a question from Noam. He or she, I'm sorry, but this is asking if fishing nets are lost at sea, where in the water column are they? Do they float buoyantly to the surface where there are really strong currents, or do they sink to the seafloor?
It definitely depends of different factors. First, it will depend which part of the fishing net is lost. If it's lost with buoys or floaters, definitely buoyancy will be positive. So they will tend to be at the surface or in the water column. It will also depend of the seafloor. In Mediterranean, for example, there are a lot of ships in the seafloor, or also reefs. And if the fishing net if the fishing net is in the reef, definitely it will stay in the seafloor and it will degrade all the seafloor. And this is also depending of the reason of the lost fishing net. In Atlantic Ocean, we have two possibilities. Because it's most sand seafloor, it will come back on the coastline, or it will go in shear in the Bay of Biscay or far or further. But yes, it will really depend also of the polymer. If it's polypropylene, polyethylene, we are not focusing on that subject currently for the project of portability. What we saw is that all the pieces we cut for our protocols are have like a negative or neutral buoyancy.
Okay, thank you for your answer. That's a question from me. I was wondering, because you're talking about the small fisheries, and from what I understand, your project focuses on small fisheries and not on like industrial, very large fisheries. Do you know the quantity of plastic that are released by those small fisheries compared to the large fisheries, and thus you can like make an assumption of like how much is released in the ocean? Or like, why do you only talk to smaller fisheries? Is it because it's harder with industrial ones? Why did you choose this?
So yeah, different answers. First, yes, it's definitely harder to speak with industrial and big and large scale fishermen. Second, they are not fishing in our marine area. So okay. Also, third, they are not losing a lot of fishing net because they have a really big financial power. They can buy a lot of radars. They can buy a lot of sorry, I forgot, but a little balise.
I know what a balise is. I don't know in French. You get receptors or GPS yes, localizators.
Yes, GPS localizator, definitely. And so if they lost them, they can find them again and they can take them. Maybe they lost some, and when they lost, it's like really big because it's really big fishing nets, like hundreds of meters or kilometers. But we don't really know that. Mm-hmm. We don't have numbers about that. About small scale fishing activity, first of all, it's a better social link. It's easier to work with them. even if sometimes it's a bit hard, but it's easier. And definitely it's also an activity that which one we can see an evolution. You know, they will evolve, they will listen to what we will say, what the government will say. We will listen to what they want to do, and we will be able to work together. With big industrial, it's definitely another sphere, it's another level. So maybe in the future, we will be able to work on that. And the third about data, we start to get this data, but really at a local, at regional or global in France, but we don't, for example, in our area, we don't have a really good report that gives us the data of used fishing net, of produced fishing net. So we don't really know that, and we also want to create a little sociological study with a laboratory, partner laboratory, to be able to create this data and to be able at the end to calculate the quotient risk. Okay,
yeah, I see. I definitely see your point. I know now Balize is beacon.
Okay, beacon.
But I know that the company CLS based like right there in Toulouse, and they do equip fishing gears with beacons, and but I didn't know they were equipping just the big companies, and but that would make sense, I guess.
Smaller can also have, but it's expensive. So yeah. Actually, I don't really remember, but I think in France, fishermen have some obligations, you know, also to repair the fishing nets they lost and everything. So yes, but it will depend of fishermen, and also beacons is not a big solution.
Yeah,
like we will not resolve everything with beacons.
Yeah, no, for sure. Let me see. Yes, so Takunda, one of the Ocean Plastic co-founder, is asking, what type of material do you think would serve as a less harmful alternative to plastic polymers? That's that's something I actually learned from your presentation. I didn't know that, you know, before the 60s, and it just makes sense, of course, that people were using cotton nets, and I guess even earlier, like 100 or more years ago, they were probably using like linen or something like this, because we don't have cotton. Do you have any, you know, idea of like what to use instead of plastic? Plastic is, you know, it's great.
That's what we talked about at the beginning, is that definitely for the current techniques of fishing, we don't have other things. Some industrials and companies are developing biosourced and biodegradable fishing nets, you know. We are also studying that with a project with another natural marine park on north of France. But current publication on biodegradable plastics are not really 100% good for, don't really show sustainable results. So we don't talk about our first result because we are not sure for the moment, but we will have to see, and we will have to give our point of view at the end to the natural marine park about what we saw on these biodegradable fishing nets, and if it's an option for the future. And if it is not an option for the future, we have to, I think, continue to looking for new material. But maybe the better option is to change the technique of fishing, and maybe to reduce the traction power, the elongation, and to be able to use again natural fibers. And like this, we will maybe, I know this is an economic sector and this is really complicated, but maybe it is also a solution for to avoid overfishing. If we cannot fish too much, maybe we will reduce the overfishing. So everything is systemic.
Yeah, everything is linked, right?
Yeah.
But in the end, I guess, you know, like if we have to stay with polymers, maybe, you know, like if your studies on the degradation of polymers, maybe you could even, you know, like give recommendation on the type of polymers people could be using with like less impacts, because I'm sure between polypropylene and polystyrene or all these polymers, there must be differences in their way they biodegrade from the UV and from the friction of the waves and currents and so on.
Yes, definitely.
So Bernard is commenting again, saying that the EU Port Reception Facilities Directive and the Single-Use Plastic Directive, including EPR for fishing gear and ropes, are in the process of being implemented. So personally, I'd be looking into this very much. I guess this is some work done with the European GRC. Are you working with the GRC at all, or?
Not for the moment. Currently not. We have to continue. This is a really recent project, so we are improving it also every time. So suggestions are definitely welcome. and yes, so not for the moment, but we have to focus on that point also at the moment. Yes.
All right, and I think that's a good moment for me to say that if you guys want to contact Edgar, feel free to send an email to the OPW Gmail website, Gmail address, sorry, or on Twitter. We'll be happy to forward your question to Edgar and put you in contact if you're interested in collaborating or asking more questions after the webinar, the live webinar is over. Let me see. Yes, there is another question about where the part where you're showing the impacts on the biota of the different, like plastic bits is really interesting. I had no clue that it really, like, the study on the oyster larva, that it depended on the concentration exposure and not on the time exposure. And there is a question about this. The person is asking, do we know if it is the polymer or the additive that are causing the impacts on that you observe, like that, the community observed?
That's a great question, and that what we are currently working, we will on the project, and other teams and partners actually are working on. First of all, we will work on the cocktail, because in the environment it's the cocktail, and after, if we saw any toxicological effects, we will try to see if it's additives and if it's the particle. But current publications are definitely going on the fact that it's more additive than the particle. Particle can have effects definitely on the quantity of organic matter uptake, of the satiety.
Yeah, like when they're saying that basically some big mammals are starved because their belly is full of plastic and there is nothing that,
So that point. Also some abrasion in the digestive gas, and that we already identified that. And after, I think for reproduction, it could be about the difference of carbon and of organic matter absorbed, because you will have like a difference of energy. Matthew Cole already talked about that in the publication in 2015 or 13. Yes, so definitely. And after, yes, about reproduction, about eggs, maybe it's more molecules and additives that could be definitely toxic. We know they are toxic, and some teams are working just on some molecules. And we show that they can have effects. So we cannot have like a 100% answer to that, like it's additives or it's particles. It's the cocktail, definitely. But after which percent, I think the community is currently saying that additives have a bigger responsibility.
Yeah. So I want to, summarize what I think an amazing project, because in the end, you're looking at chemistry when you look at the degradation of the fishing nets. You're looking at biology when you're looking at the effect on biota and the ingestion and all of this. You're looking at social sciences because you're looking at the behavior of fishermen and how we can work hand in hand once again, I want to highlight that I'm really impressed by the fact that you're really talking about exchanges with fishermen and not the science telling the fishermen what to do, and you're taking into consideration the economic importance of fisheries. So you have this social science, and then you have of course physical oceanography, because you're looking at the movement of the fishing nets and so on. And in the end, all the way down this line of this entire value chain, I want to call it, of the deflect fishing gears, you have the political science, where you really want to from what I understand, provide guidance into the way like what fishermen can do, and all the way to policymakers, because in the end, once you prove that something works on the social side, on the economic side, on the I would say like hard science science and biology and so on, then you can move on to policy making, and you can show like this is a success story here that we have, that we can move to different regions of the world and to different fields. And for this part, I really want to congratulate you, because I think this is really important, and that we need more studies of this type going, because plastic is a transdisciplinary topic, because we can't really study the ocean without studying the inputs from the river, the inputs from the fisherman industry, but also like really strong economic impact, because we cannot say all of a sudden to not only fishermen, but also people, selling stuff that you cannot use plastic anymore. Yeah. And all of this. So I think it's a great study, and I would really love to promote it further down the line once you have like more results, and that you can show us more of this amazing work that you're doing. I think we can close now this webinar. Do you have any last comments you want to make?
No, just I don't know. Thank you very much. Maybe we currently say in the organization that living in our planet is not a right but a privilege. So we have to care about our planet.
Yes, that's very true. Very true. We should write it down, everyone. All right. Thank you again, Edgar. Thank you to all the participants, the viewers. Thank you for your very interesting questions and comments. Again, if you want to contact Edgar, feel free to send us a message, and we'll make sure that we will transfer it to Edgar. But I'm sure you will hear more about this project in the near future. For our next ocean plastic webinar, we'll be meeting in April, which is just around the corner, and we're going to have a special webinar for you with the co-founders. So this is Takunda, Ryota, Delphine, and I presenting what we are up to in our own field, and how the ocean plastic webinar will evolve in the coming months. All right, thank you.